Welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church, to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting.
Hello and welcome back to the Gottesdienst podcast. I am Paul Schultz, and today we will be discussing a topic that has been really quite popular for discussion lately in our circles, certainly in the church at large, and that is the topic of beauty. And what we'll be looking at here is basically what do the scriptures actually have to say about beauty, instead of just talking about it as a general classical term that goes with goodness and truth. And to really get us into what the scriptures have to say about this and what other people might have to say about this is the Reverend Kyle Verage. He is the pastor at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. And he presented this topic just over a year ago now at the Confessional Lutheran Homeschool League Conference here in Carlisle, Iowa. So that was in 2025. Kyle, welcome.
Hey, it's good to be with you. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was able to be at that conference, and I thought it was great. And so, yeah, hopefully you can enlighten us a little bit as to what what the scriptures actually say about beauty here. So where do we want to begin?
I'd like to start with that common turn of phrase that we throw out there all the time, that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I think when we look at this phrase, we can see that there's truth there, but there's also untruth as well. There's truth when you consider like things. For example, if you're considering the music of Bach or Handel, all right, those are like composers, all right, similar time frame, similar style, genre, all of those things. Yeah, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Someone might have different. We can have differences of opinion there, and that's okay. But then something's really, really wrong if someone were to say, yes, the music of Taylor Swift is more beautiful than the music of J.S. Bach. You know, that's where that common turn of phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it breaks down because we see that these two that it just can't be, it shouldn't be, that it might work when you're talking preferences over like things, but when you're talking kind of in the extreme, it breaks down. And so that example of the music of J.S. Bach versus the music of Taylor Swift kind of points out, and I'd like to argue that we're kind of forming here what I'm calling just the layman's or the common man's aesthetic. All right, the common sense aesthetic, and that's what the word is. The study of beauty is called aesthetics. You know, putting aside how we use that term colloquially in English today, but the study of beauty is actually, there's a whole discipline. It's called aesthetics. People have been debating it for a long time, but that's what we have in. We all have kind of a common sense aesthetic, and that's that. Hey, there are things that are objectively beautiful, and maybe we can't articulate it, maybe we can't totally put our finger on it, but we can definitely see the music of Bach is more beautiful than the music of Taylor Swift. So we all know that.
So you might say that what we're going to be talking about is that beauty is indeed in the eye of the beholder, but it's not defined by the eye of the beholder.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a nice way to say it. Sure. Yeah, and so again, that common phrase, there's truth in it, but there's also untruth in it as well. So let's unpack that. So yes, like I said, the study of beauty is aesthetics. And I didn't know this, but aesthetics is derived from the Greek word aisthenomai, which means, according to the oh my goodness, the BDG, BDAG, sorry, BDAG. It's to be aware of something, to notice something by means of the senses. So strictly speaking, it has to do with sensing something. And therein, we kind of are putting our finger on what is the debate within aesthetics. Well, the debate is between, there is the thing that is being sensed, right? And it has certain qualities, and it has certain uses and purposes and all of those things. But then there is also our sensing of that thing, our perception of that thing. And so the kind of age-old debate, within aesthetics is what's that balance? What is that balance between the objective, the inherent beauty of a thing, and then our perception of that thing? So again, I'm not going to really take up that debate a ton, because quite frankly, debating this kind of in abstract, leave that to the philosophers. I don't particularly, that's not my jam. I don't do that. I'm more concerned with what does the Bible have to say, and that to me will determine what true beauty is and how we should view beauty and all that stuff. But just for, kind of by way of preface, knowing that aesthetics is this debate between, what are the marks of objective beauty, and then what is our perception of it? How does that work? I think it would be helpful just to go through a little bit of the history of aesthetics. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So I didn't do a really thorough investigation here. I consulted the Encyclopedia Britannica that we have on our shelves here at the home. It's a 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. So this was as kind of deep as I went, and I'm just going to regurgitate basically what this Encyclopedia Britannica has to say, giving us a brief outline of kind of the history of aesthetics, the debate, and where it's gone. So predictably, it starts with the Greek philosophers. So Socrates. Here's what it says. For Socrates, every beautiful object is so called because it serves some rational end, whether security or the gratification of man. Socrates appears to have attached little importance to the immediate gratification which a beautiful object affords to perception and contemplation, but to have emphasized rather its power of furthering the more necessary ends of life. So maybe you've got a different word for it, Paul, but to me it's very utilitarian. Socrates is, if it's only beautiful, a thing is only beautiful if it's kind of useful for the
pragmatic
person. Yeah, pragmatic. Yeah, that's Socrates' aesthetic. Plato, Socrates' disciple, his philosophy, his aesthetic philosophy is quite robust, and actually, I'm going to actually devote some time to that a little bit later. So I'm actually going to pass over Plato for now, but then after Plato is Aristotle. Here a quote from the Encyclopedia. Aristotle proceeded to a more serious investigation of the aesthetic phenomena so as to develop by scientific analysis certain principles of beauty and art. So here I would say Aristotle is really diving into the objective, right? Trying to identify the objective standards of beauty and somewhat limiting human perception of beauty. By the way, I'm overcoming a cold here, so hopefully I can make it through this interview and not croak out here.
Yeah, so far so good.
Okay.
So is Aristotle then where we would get some of these categories of like proportion and scale,
totally,
and contrast and all this sorts of stuff? So
Yep.
like some real categories to work with instead of just, is it useful?
Yep.
Does it do its job well?
Right.
This sort of stuff.
Totally. So yeah, we have those standards that we talk about, which are very real and very useful and again objective. Artists employ these things. The painter is employing color and scale and perspective and medium and what's the one? Just like size, size and that sort of stuff. The composer, help me out, Paul, some of the dynamics,
Right.
instrumentation,
rhythm.
melody. Yes. All right. So the artist employs these very objective, systematic instruments, forms to achieve his end. All right. So Aristotle, I think, is really honing in on that. Okay, here I have to chuckle a little bit because I said this is a 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, and so that's the height of the modern age, kind of pinnacle of Enlightenment thinking and humanism. Man is center of the universe. Industrial Revolution is on, all that sort of thing. So it's quite interesting what it says here. It goes from, the Greek philosophers, and then it says this: we may pass by the few thoughts on the subject to be found among medieval writers and turn to modern theories, beginning with those of German writers as the most numerous and most elaborately set forth. So
we skipped one of the heights of Western beauty because they had few thoughts.
Yeah, they didn't contribute anything.
They were too busy making beautiful music and buildings.
Yes, exactly. The cathedrals. Yeah, the Gothic cathedrals, Neo-Gothic, and before that, Byzantine architecture contributed nothing to the conversation of beauty. It's stunning, the bias there. But
I think we call that hubris.
Hubris, yep, and that's why it all had to be shattered, in the terrors of World War I, So, okay, so the encyclopedia really isn't all that helpful when taking up the Christian aesthetic. All right, so we will do that in a little bit, but first I do want to talk about these supposed real thinkers about beauty. All right, what did they have to say about it? Again, the encyclopedia here, it lists a bunch of names which people for the most part have not heard before. All right, you've got Bouffier, Hutcheson, Reed, Burke, Hegel, Schelling, Schopenhauer, Richter. But then the encyclopedia has a big section on Immanuel Kant, and I think he's worth mentioning here. Kant takes an important step in denying objective existence to beauty. Aesthetic value for him is fitness to please as object of pure contemplation. This aesthetic satisfaction is more than mere agreeableness, since it must be disinterested and free. That is to say, from all concern about the real existence of the object and about our dependence on it. He denies that we can reach a valid universal aesthetic judgment of the form, quote, all objects possessing such and such qualities are beautiful. All right, so Kant,
so it's almost pragmatic, but almost worse than the one we started with.
Yeah. Well, yes, totally worse. I mean, Socrates is, utilitarian, pragmatic, all that sort of thing. But this is like not pragmatic. It has nothing to do with the real life, like real, actual, put your hand on the tree type beauty. It's more all inside, all internal. It's 100% subjective. It's pure subjective beauty. All right, is what Kant pushes for. So this is, to me, is where you get, someone who's like, yeah, Taylor Swift, way better than Bach, way more beautiful than Bach. And anyone with common sense knows that's not right. It's just not right. It can't be true. So I think we can say, so there you go. That's as much history as I can kind of give on where human thought has gone regarding beauty. And I think we can kind of agree that at the end of the day, I hate to say this is maybe my thoughts on philosophy generally. Whenever we're musing and thinking deeply apart from the scriptures, we're just never going to get there. We're never going to get there. We can use all the big words that we want, but at the end of the day, if we want truth, if we want real beauty, if we want reason, if we want good, we have to take up the scriptures. So, we can, I don't want to say totally set aside what philosophers have given us, but really that's where we need to go. We need to go to beauty in the Bible.
Yeah. I remember you and I were driving around that one time a few years ago, and we were discussing Christian responses to culture. And I remember you slamming your hands on the steering wheel saying, the Bible is the culture. We have, and what we were talking about was basically that Christianity does have, instead of just a response to these things, it has a positive view that can stand on its own with the things that we have revealed to us by the Holy Spirit. So
I remember that conversation now.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So where do you want to start?
Okay, so this is how I approached this. I'm not like a huge language guy. I know enough to be dangerous, right? But obviously, I didn't know off the top of my head what is the Greek word or the Hebrew word for beauty. So what I had to do was I needed data. I needed to know where to go in the scriptures. So I had to start with the English translation to get me to what are the Greek and Hebrew words for these things. So what I just did a simple word search in the ESV for the word beauty or handsome or beautiful. All right, so beautiful, beauty, handsome, and where do they appear? Now, before I even talk about the results, I do realize that this, to a certain extent, is there's a flaw in the research right from the get-go, because you're not necessarily getting all the places in the Bible that where beauty it truly is, the word beauty or beautiful is. Rather, you're getting what English translators say the word beauty or beautiful is. So, it's not a perfect system. But again, I needed a starting place. So I started with the ESV, and I got 115 hits in the ESV. And just to kind of check to see if I was on the right track, I also did the same word search in the New King James and the NIV. The New King James yielded 104 hits of beauty, beautiful, handsome. The NIV yielded also 104 hits for beauty, beautiful, handsome. All right, so it's close. All right, I think that's the idea. There's whatever translation you're using, you're getting a good sample of what the words actually are. Okay, so here we go. I would say my Greek is a little bit stronger than my Hebrew. So I was really hoping that it would be really clear. There would be a bunch of hits in the Greek New Testament, and I'd be able to use that as my data. Unfortunately, in the ESV, only 10 out of the 115 times does beauty, beautiful, or handsome appear in the New Testament in the Greek. So it didn't yield a ton of, fruit there. In Acts 3, it's called the Beautiful Gate. All right, the word there is horios. Romans 10, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. That's horios. And then you've got two hits. Stephen preaching in Acts 7 to the Jewish leadership, describing the baby Moses as beautiful, and he uses the term asteos. There's two uses of asteos in the New Testament. Euprepia is another word. That's James 1, verse 11. Aphthartos, 1 Peter 3. There's one example of that. And then the term kalos, all right, that term, kalos, is used by Jesus to describe, it's in both Matthew and Mark, parallel accounts, Jesus describing Mary's anointing of his feet, all right, or anointing of his head, right, that she has done a beautiful work for me, right, kalos. So there's two examples there. So again, nothing really definitive there, in terms of the New Testament data. So I was a little disappointed when I first saw that because, again, I'm a little stronger in the Greek. So I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to go into the Hebrew. I'm going to have to go into the Old Testament here. So how's that going to go? So, well, actually, it was very rewarding because it became very clear that what the words are at play. So the overwhelming term to describe beauty, beautiful, or handsome in the Old Testament is the term yafeh, okay? And that occurs, oh my goodness, I have it here somewhere, 60 out of the 105 times in the Old Testament where beautiful, where it's translated beautiful, it's yafeh. So overwhelming, yafeh is the word. And here's just a few examples. So in Genesis 12, Sarai is described as beautiful, or yafeh. Rachel also, Jacob's wife, is described as beautiful. Joseph in Genesis 39 is described as yafeh, but obviously translators use the term handsome instead of beautiful. David's eyes are referred to as beautiful in 1 Samuel 16. Abigail, one of David's wives, is referred to as beautiful. Tamar is beautiful. Down the line. All right. So there's Esther, Queen Vashti, Abishag, the Shunammite, the lady that you remember who. They're quiz time, Paul. Do you remember who Abishag is?
Yeah, I'd rather have you tell me though.
All right. So Abishag is the one that lays with David when and keeps him warm. That's right. Okay, so we get the idea. So we know this. That's the term yafeh. And then another term which was strong, another strong term, was this term fa'ar, or there's a cognate tif'arah, same root, right? And well, what was interesting here, there is a subtle distinction between yafeh and fa'ar / tif'arah. And Paul, I'll ask you, like, what is that distinction? So here, let me just give you some of the examples of what here are referred to as beautiful, using the term fa'ar or tif'arah. So Aaron's garments in Exodus 28 are referred to as beautiful. The holy place in Psalm 96 is referred to as beautiful, fa'ar, tif'arah. The crown of wisdom in Proverbs 4 is fa'ar. Let's see. The garments in Isaiah 52, the house of the Lord, Israel, the headdress, and again, the crown, the Lord's beautiful place, Israel's house, on and on and on. So do you see the distinction?
Yeah, so yafeh is much more a people descriptor, and then fa'ar and tif'arah are much more like things, constructed things, garments, crowns.
Yep. So animate versus inanimate. I wish I could say I had some like grand, awesome conclusion about that. There's something there, there's definitely something there. I didn't have the time to kind of really dig into that. But there's definitely something there to be said. But okay, so and then the other hits. So that between those two words, or those, or the cognate, that's almost all of them. So there's a handful of other words there. I don't want to totally get into those. There's one. The next closest one is the term tov, which, even a novice Hebrew person like me, knows, tov, like that's
right, very, very big in creation.
Yes. All right. So each day when God creates, he says it is very good. It is tov. It's very good, tov. And then on day 7, God steps back and he says tov ma'ov, which means it is very good. All right. It is very good. So tov ma'ov. So tov can be translated as beautiful. So again, we're putting our finger, I think, on something with that. But again, that was only a handful of examples where tov is translated beautiful. Again, overwhelmingly, yafeh is the word for people, and then fa'ar or tif'arah is the term for kind of inanimate things, is the term for beautiful things. Okay. Now, like I said, Greek is more of my strong suit. So I was just curious, like, okay, taking the data now that I've got, all of these places where, now that I know what these words are, so yafeh in the Hebrew, or fa'ar, tif'arah, what are these words in the Greek Septuagint? So again, using the software, I did that, and the term for, well, here I'll start with the fa'ar, tif'arah, for the inanimate objects, the beautiful things. The term is doxa or doxos. Okay, and where we get doxological from. So again, I didn't pursue this a ton, and there's something there. There's definitely, you could make a lot of hay out of that. There's gems to be uncovered there, I'm sure. But that's not where I went. Instead, I chose the term that had the bigger yield in the Old Testament data. So for inanimate things, for beautiful things, the term was doxa. But then for beautiful people, right, the Hebrew word is yafeh, but the corresponding Greek word is the term kalos.
And there we get good again.
Yes. And again, Paul, when you hear that term kalos, what are you thinking? Where do you want to go?
I always think of Good Shepherd, right?
Yes.
I am the Good Shepherd.
Yep. That's right. And so without giving too much away, right? What makes the good? I mean, is the good shepherd good just because he's like pretty? Because he's like a really handsome dude, right? That's not quite the right translation, right? Beautiful shepherd is not the right translation. The translation is good shepherd. So isn't it interesting that the Greek, the Septuagint chosen Greek word for which is translated beautiful in our translations, is the Greek word kalos. All right. So that, to me, that was kind of like a mind bending, realization for me. And truly that word is what I picked it up and I ran with it because I was like, ooh, there's a lot of good stuff here. So I was really excited by that the term for beautiful people in particular, the Greek term is kalos. All right. And there's a lot of places you can go in the Bible, obviously. So that's the big takeaway from just the data perspective of what do the scriptures offer there. Kalos is the Greek word for beautiful. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is really just kind of dig into this word. And so what the real, I think, good places, something that was really useful here is not just the BDAG, but also the TDNT was a helpful thing. So I looked up kalos in the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, and it really opened it up from there. This whole discussion of beauty flowered from there. So what I'd like to do now is really just talk about kalos, the term kalos, not just in the Bible, but also in the broader Hellenistic world. Is that good?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Let's go. Let's do it.
It is helpful often, sometimes I should say, to see not just what a word in the Bible means in its own context, how the scriptures use it, but it's also very helpful often to consider how the word is used in the broader Hellenistic age in which the scriptures are written. And again, this kind of yielded some good fruit for me. So kalos in the Hellenistic age is a very loaded term. So something that I was using the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, TDNT, and this is what it said. The combination kalos kai agathos, which occurs in multiple forms, and from which there derives the noun kalokagathia.
Perfect.
Which is a fun word to say. Yeah, kalokagathia. Now, just to be clear here, all right, I'm just going to pause there for a second. So the idea here is kalos, the term kalos, all right, beauty, is in Greek thought is almost indistinguishable from that of goodness. So much so that the Greeks literally put the two terms together all the time.
Right. So we have kalos being good, agathos being beautiful.
Well, no, I think it's the other way around. So kalos is the idea of beautiful, and then good agathos is the good.
Okay.
So beautiful good. But the idea that there is the two terms are so close in kind of semantic understanding and in use that the Greeks themselves just like put them together. So kalos kai agathos. All right. And they even made up a word. I mean, it's almost kind of like German here. I don't know German, but everyone says that the Germans just kind of like throw words together, and that's what their words, to make new words. Well, right. That's what the Greeks did here. Kalokagathia. That's kalos All right. And then the the conjunction kai, and then agathos, or agathe, agathia. So kala kagathia is kalos kai agathos, just kind of mushed together. So anyways, it was so cool to see that this idea of beauty in Greek thought went hand in hand with the idea of goodness. So anyways, continuing on the quote now in the TDNT, kalokagathia plays a most important role in Greek life. The combination, and it is highlighted, or it's italicized in the text. Most important role in Greek life. The combination is found from the 5th century BC on. The two meanings are clearly recognizable: a political and social meaning on the one side, and an ethical and spiritual on the other. We can see from Xenophon, Greek historian, that kalos kai agathos became an expression for the Greek ideal of life. Xenophon tells how Socrates investigated the content of the kalos kai agathos. In his search, he argued that outward beauty is not the distinguishing feature. So, perhaps a little bit different from what we read in the encyclopedia about Socrates. Socrates here, at least according to Xenophon, says that, outward beauty isn't just the thing. All right, there's more to the beautiful than just outward beauty. Okay, going on with the quote. Socrates met a man who was called kalos kagathos. So there again, that's that word, these two words being put together. So the good, beautiful one in his neighborhood. He was the landowner Ischomachus, who was in every respect a model landlord, who had a well-ordered family and who discharged his duties to the polis. And pause there for a second. Paul, what's the polis?
Yeah, the city, the people, the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything around.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that, the polis was the center of Greek life and all of that. So this guy Ischomachus is called the kalos kagathos, because the beautiful good man, because he's doing everything good for his community, for the polis. Okay, so to finish this quote now, in Demosthenes, the kalos kagathos, the beautiful good man, is the ideal politician who does not consider his private interests or personal enmities, but only the welfare of the state. Okay, so that's the TDNT. And it's not just the term kalos. Yes, it can be translated beautiful, but as we all know, to translate is to betray. Usually one word in the Greek, it's not just a one-to-one thing. Usually to translate a word fully and properly, you almost need multiple words. So kalos doesn't just mean beautiful. It doesn't just mean kind of outward beauty. It means so much more than that. And what was really interesting here was that, okay, so now this term kalos in Greek thought, now it's giving me this other word, kalokagathia, this beautiful good idea. And apparently that was a big deal in the Greco-Roman world. And then lo and behold, I looked back in the encyclopedia and kalokagathia was mentioned there too, which was confirmation. I mean, to me, that screams that, hey, if the encyclopedia is saying it, if the TDNT is saying it, this really must be a big deal. So this idea of the this is why I saved Plato for now. All right. Remember when we did our brief cursory history of aesthetics, I skipped over Plato, and that's because in Plato's section, this idea of kalokagathia was specifically mentioned. Okay, so here's a This is what the encyclopedia has to say about Plato's aesthetic. We may conclude that Plato's mind leaned decidedly to the conception of an absolute beauty, which took its place in his scheme of ideas or self-existing forms. This true beauty is nothing discoverable as an attribute in another thing, for these are only beautiful things, not the beautiful itself. And we talk about the Platonic ideal, all right, the ideals of things. And everyone brings up the chair, right? There's the ideal chair out there, and it has these certain attributes, all right? But every chair that we observe is a reflection or a shadow of that ideal chair out there. Okay, so that's Platonic philosophy, the ideal. So he talks about the beautiful as this ideal, this absolute beautiful thing, or this absolute beauty out there. So we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but it does kind of get you thinking about it that way. But back to the encyclopedia on Plato. Plato tends to identify the self-beautiful with the conceptions of the true and the good. And thus arose the Platonic formula, kalokagathia. All right, so there it is, kalokagathia, the beautiful and the good. So far as his writings embody the notion of any common element in beautiful objects, it is proportion, harmony, or unity among their parts. He emphasizes unity in its simplest aspect as seen in evenness of line and purity of color. He recognizes in places the beauty of the mind and seems to think that the highest beauty of proportion is to be found in the union of a beautiful mind with a beautiful body. All right, so beautiful form and also what I would call kind of beautiful. Well, that's not exactly true.
Interior and exterior, both.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Interior, exterior. That is, in Platonic thought, that's what it's all about. A beautiful mind and a beautiful body. The Romans actually used that phrase as well, a sound mind and a sound body. And I don't know what the Latin phrase offhand is, but I think the point I'm trying to make here is that this is huge. This idea of the kalokagathia, the beautiful and the good, is pervasive. It's everywhere across Greek and Roman thought. It's how you talk about beauty in the ancient world. And if I may say, again, sorry about my voice. If I may say, this is, I think, the best that human philosophy can get you, right? Because it just makes sense. I think this is, if we're to, we started our whole conversation talking about like a common sense aesthetic, right? Where we know that Bach's music is more beautiful than Taylor Swift's, right? We know this implicitly. Might not be able to articulate why, but we just know it. But Platonic philosophy, I think, is giving voice and fleshing out what is the common sense aesthetic, kind of the natural law kind of aesthetic. All right, beautiful mind, beautiful body, external, internal beauty. All right, so I think we can acknowledge that there's some good thinking there. All right, it's not perfect. It's not necessarily biblical, but it's good.
It's at least acknowledging the existence, and that we need to pursue figuring out as much as we can of what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So Plato, kalokagathia, great stuff there. Now, this is where I had a lot of fun. Now that I did the work, I found the word is kalos. I looked up the word in my reference materials, and it led me to this other idea, kalos, kai, agathos, the beautiful and the good. Now, I just for kicks, I wanted to go into the scriptures and find, hey, maybe, just maybe, there are places in either the Greek New Testament or the Septuagint where maybe kalos and agathos appear together. And, oh man, they do.
Awesome.
It was just really fun to see that and to see what then happened. All right. It was really cool.
So where are we going first?
I'd like to start, even though it's not the first kind of place chronologically, I would like to start with Luke chapter 8.
Okay.
Because I think Luke knows exactly what he's doing here. I mean, obviously he knows exactly what he's doing. He's inspired by the Holy Spirit, all that sort of thing. But the reason I was kind of really like this is because I happened to do a paper for in my circuit. We did a conference on the Large Catechism, and we were doing the second article. I was doing a paper on the second article of the Creed, and I was really digging into that term Lord, because Luther says Jesus is my Lord who has redeemed me, lost and condemned person, et cetera, et cetera. He makes a lot of he spends a lot of time on that idea of what is it to be a Lord. And so then I looked, okay, how does Jesus use that term? And there was a time there in Luke when the disciples are debating, who's the greatest, and then Jesus says, whoever would consider himself great must consider himself servant of all. And then he talks about how which is
very, just real quick, that's similar to the polis thing we talked about, that this great landowner is the guy who thought about the polis, the people around him, before he thought about himself.
Yes, exactly. Well, and so there's actually there's a lot to go there. All right. But this is in Luke 22. Jesus says, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. And, when I looked into that text, when I was getting ready for that paper, that term benefactor is the Greek word euergetes. And it's a hapax legomenon. So, and then you look this word up, and this word is just a blatantly Hellenistic word. It is a Greek Hellenistic world word, and that Luke is using it because in its context, it doesn't seem to make sense when we read it in English. But the only way to make sense of what Jesus is saying there is if you understand the way that euergetes, benefactors, is used back in the Hellenistic age. So Luke is using this term, and he knows exactly how he's using it. He's using it as it's being used in the ancient world, and that's the only way to understand that passage. Now, when you go back to Luke chapter 8, where the appearance of kalos kai agathos appears, I am wanting to say that Luke is using these two terms right next to each other, that this isn't just coincidence, all right, that this is Luke, and this, obviously Jesus said this, right? But Luke is specifically recording it because he wants the Greek listener in his audience, Luke, a companion of Paul, traveling around the Mediterranean world. I'm of the mind that Luke absolutely knows who his audience is, and that they will know where this term, kalos kai agathos, and Luke is putting his specific mark on it, and he's trying to identify, well, how do we as Christians understand the beautiful and the good? Yes.
So where does this show up in Luke 8?
Yeah, so Luke 8, it's verse 15.
Okay, so the parable of the sower.
Yeah, so this is the parable of the sower. This is Jesus explaining it to the disciples after they ask. And so Jesus is describing the good soil, right? So as for that, in the good soil, they are those who, hearing the word, hold it fast the ESV says, in an honest and good heart, and bear fruit with patience, right? But the two Greek terms there for honest and good are actually kalos, kai, agathos. So beautiful and good heart, and bear fruit with patience. Actually, well, it's kale.
So again, getting back to the Plato thing, that would be in a life or an existence that is both inwardly and outwardly good and beautiful.
Yeah, and here, because it's in the context of the parable of the sower, all right. For us as Christians, what makes a thing or a person truly beautiful in God's sight? It comes through the word, the word,
the faithful reception of the word.
Yes. So the word declares us righteous before God. Jesus makes us beautiful in God's sight by his spoken word. And then guess what? That word then has an effect. It actually changes us, not merely internally, but also externally. It manifests itself in our speech, in our behavior towards our neighbor. So the word bears fruit in our lives, in the world, the real world around us. All right. So there is, yes, external and internal beauty, to put it in those terms. Yep. So again, I really, really think that this is Luke. He is well aware of the debates out there, the aesthetic debate, and this term kalokagathia in the Greco-Roman world, and he is putting his mark on it. All right, he's defining it biblically as we should consider it as Christians. So I think that's totally right. I think it's just awesome. Luke totally knew what he was doing there. Okay.
Where do you want to go next?
Yeah. So then there's three other places in the Bible where kalos and agathos appear right next to each other. The one is 1 Samuel chapter 16, and this is.
So we got David.
Yeah. So David, and then the description is actually it's Abigail. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. We're starting with David. So 1 Samuel 16, it's David. David is described as, let's see, the exact verse here is, this is right when he's anointed by Samuel.
Right.
All his brothers come in, but he's not there. And then David comes in. And then here's the description.
Verse 12.
Verse 12, yep. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. So there it is. So beautiful, beautiful eyes and handsome. So kalos and agathos, all right? Both things are right next to each other.
And it's wonderfully prefaced there with verse 6 and following about, don't look on his appearance, but look on, right? The Lord looks on the heart.
Yes.
So then it's, firstly an inward thing that also then can be seen in some ways outwardly.
Yeah. And, when Michelangelo chose to sculpt David, and you got that picture of, the statue of David and all that stuff. And I don't know. Maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm just too, sheepish or something, but like that statue kind of creeps me out. But in any case, I think we can all agree that, it from a artistic standpoint, it is a masterpiece. Like, it is so well done. It is so lifelike. It's unbelievable. But why does Michelangelo choose to sculpt David? Why is he the character? Well, it's because, yes, okay, all right, he's this handsome guy, but what really makes David beautiful and good, kalos, kai, agathos, is who he is. And especially, at the beginning of his story, all right, he's the model Christian. Like, he is the man of faith who, stands up to Goliath, who trusts God's promises implicitly.
Who repents when he's called to it.
And when he repents, when he's called to it, absolutely. When that whole thing with Saul, when Saul is trying to kill him, and he will not raise his hand against the Lord's anointed. So he's just this virtuous, honorable, faithful man. All right. In addition to, being outwardly handsome, and let's face it, he was probably, not probably, but he was a warrior. He was good with a sword. He was just the full package. He was totally the full package. So for him to be described as kalos and agathos in the same sentence, all right, is, I think, significant. The next passage is 1 Samuel 25, so a few chapters later. And this is David and Abigail. And I really like this one. I think this one is cool too. This time it's not David that's referred to as kalos, kai, agathos, but Abigail is. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of dig into the story a little bit. Is that cool?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, okay. Let's do it.
All right. So the story kind of starts where, so David is on the run from King Saul, because King Saul wants to kill him, because he's fallen out of God's favor. He's an unbeliever, and he knows that David is the Lord's anointed now, but nonetheless he wants to kill him. So David is on the run. He's kind of accumulated a following. There's several. There's a good group of men that's with him there, and they are in the wilderness of Paran. It says, verse 2, there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now, the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife, Abigail. Now, Nabal, right? We know what that means. It means fool, okay?
Right.
The woman was discerning and beautiful. So there it is, all right? So this is a cool sentence. So the man's name was Nabal, the name of his wife, Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful. So the terms there are, it's just funny, the translators, what they choose to do. The words are kalos, kai, agathos.
There it is.
But the man was harsh and badly behaved. And so we definitely see a, contrast between Abigail on the one hand and Nabal on the other. Now, Nabal was shearing a sheep. And then the story goes that while Nabal is shearing a sheep, which was no small affair, I mean, we're talking, there's literally thousands of sheep here. So there, this is a huge area that they're covering, and they need herds, they need pasture for all of these sheep. I mean, so Nabal's possessions and property it's a massive chunk of land. So in this time, David is hunkered down, and he has been basically providing free protection to Nabal's flocks, just by virtue of him kind of hiding in the wilderness there. And, whether that's thieves that might come to Nabal's Nabal's flocks, or perhaps predators, whatever it might be. David has been providing free protection. So, excuse me, David comes to Nabal and asks, verse 10, or verse 9, when David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David, and then they waited. Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men who come from I do not know where?" So David's young man turned back. And then the idea was, so David is trying to get food and sustenance for his men. He sends his men to go ask Nabal, "Hey, Nabal, we've been giving you protection these last few days, weeks. Can you please give us some food? We're parched and hungry here in the wilderness." Nabal says, "Who is this? Who is David? Why should I do this for an upstart like you?" And what is Nabal showing by that reaction, by his answer to David? What would you say, Paul?
Well, he's not recognizing David as the anointed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, because this is no secret. It's no secret that Saul wants to kill David. And I mean, there's wanted posters in effect all over Israel at this point. So it's no secret that Saul wants to kill David. Well, why does he want to kill David? It's because God has abandoned Saul and chosen David. All right. Everybody knows this. All right. So for Nabal then to not just refuse David, but to insult David, he's not just refusing David and insulting David. Who is he really refusing?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of just, some of the Pharisee criticisms of Jesus. Like, can anything good come from where this guy came from?
Yeah.
Where did this guy come? Who is he?
Yeah.
Right.
Who is he? Yeah. And really what it is, it's portraying their unbelief. All right. They don't believe. Okay. The Pharisees at heart do not believe that Jesus is the Son of God, the Messiah. Here, Nabal refuses to acknowledge David as the Lord's anointed, and thereby he's refusing to acknowledge the Lord himself. Okay, so he's an idiot. All right, he really lives up to his name in that way. All right, so what's the reaction? All right, try to go a little faster here. Sorry.
You're good.
What is David's reaction to Nabal's answer?
Get your swords. We're going to go take care of this guy.
Yeah, if he's not going to give it to us, then we're gonna kill him, kill his household, and we're going to take what is rightfully ours. All right, and we find out later that not exactly, not David at his best. All right,
right.
This was a blood boiling heat of passion move on David's part. Okay, so David is ready to literally kill everybody. Okay, but then what does Abigail do? Abigail is Nabal's wife. What does Abigail do? And go ahead, Paul. What does Abigail do?
Yeah, verse 18, she takes 200 loaves, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep prepared, 5 seahs of grain, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes, laid them on donkeys, and then sends them to David.
Right. And then she, goes herself, and she is pleading with David. She goes and pleads with David.
Falls before him on her face, bows to the ground, calls him Lord.
Yeah.
Right. Makes a request, makes a plea for mercy.
Yeah. Yeah. And says, now then, my Lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from saving with your own hand, now let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my Lord be as Nabal. All right. So why is she doing this for David? Is this just because she's trying to save her own skin? Why is she doing this?
She recognizes who he is.
Yes. All right. And she
wisdom can overcome foolishness, right? She's described as wise.
She's described
discerning.
as wise.
Yeah.
Yes. And at its heart, what is wisdom? All right. It comes from faith. It's born of faith. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All right. So
the ability to recognize the truth and the goodness, which can only come from knowing truth and goodness.
yes. Yes. So Abigail here is beautiful and good, not just, or she's beautiful, not just because she's a drop and, like looker. All right. She is beautiful in outwardly, but what makes her truly beautiful is the fact that she has faith in the Lord and the God of Israel. And then it manifests itself, just like we talked about with in Luke, or it manifests itself in outward actions, in how she carries herself in the world. All right, and it's boldness. I really love it too, because what I like here is she technically subverting her husband's, is she what should I say here? How do I ask this?
She's speaking out of turn and not
is she
respecting
doing
her husband.
the wrong thing? Right. Is she not submitting to her husband in this moment?
Right. Faithfulness always trumps these things, right?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, she could say to David, yeah, my husband is a total nitwit. You should totally go in there, guns a-blazing, swords a-swinging, and kill my husband, all right, because he's terrible. No, she comes and she is willing to accept the consequences, and even if David should choose to die alongside her husband Nabal, all right, so she pleads for mercy, but ultimately she's doing this out of love, out of care, she's doing this out of care and out of love. So it's a beautiful thing. I think it's great.
And of course the fun ending of the story, right? Just to bring that up, is that David's like, "Hey, good job. You prevented me from killing your husband." And then 10 days later, God kills the husband anyway.
Yes. Yep. Right. And then I don't know. It's always hard. The polygamy thing in the Old Testament, it's always a hard thing. But he does, Abigail becomes, a wife of David. So he is described, David is described as kalos kai agathos. It seems fitting that he should marry one who is kale kai agathe. Yes. Right. Okay. And then the other one, the other place in the Bible where kalos and agathos coincide is in Zechariah chapter 9. Right? Zechariah chapter 9. I should have had these marked off. That probably would have been a good idea. Okay. So, it's verse. It's verse 17, but I'm going to start at verse 16. And Zechariah here is prophesying about the reign of the Messiah. He says, "On that day, the Lord their God will save them as the flock of his people, for like the jewels of a crown, they shall shine on his land." Now here it comes. "For how great is his goodness and how great is his beauty." All right, so there you see it. God is described as beautiful and good. Kalos kai agathos. And it goes on, "Grain shall make the young men flourish, and new wine the young women." And honestly, that's probably where all of this needs to go, is if we are going to find the picture of good, of the beautiful and the good, why the Lord himself, Jesus himself, is the picture, is the exemplar, the model for what it is to be beautiful and good. Now, we do have that line in Isaiah, he had no form or majesty that we should desire him. So we don't know what Jesus looked like. And it doesn't really matter, right? But I think the idea here is that Jesus, he had all the good virile qualities, all right? He was a carpenter's son, right? So the guy is working with his hands. He's out in the shop. He's lifting heavy things. No doubt Jesus has a strong body, right? As far as, his looks, who knows? It's all conjecture. We can't know that, and we don't need to. But as far as like the externals, I think Jesus checks those boxes. I'm sure he checks the boxes. But then again, what really makes him beautiful and good, truly beautiful, is what he uses it all for. All right. And that is not in service to self, but it's in service to others. It's using the gifts that he is using his divine gifts for us, to give to us.
Right. And he makes the bride beautiful.
Yes. And right. That is the beautiful and the good. And that's really how I finished this thing out at the homeschool conference, the Lutheran homeschool conference, is, because you've got these families who, homeschool parents, they're always wondering, am I giving the best education to my kid? Am I giving them a beautiful education? You always feel, as a homeschooler myself, you sometimes feel like you're barely scraping by some days, like you're not accomplishing everything you need to accomplish, whatever. And what I wanted to tell them, and what I think all Christians need to hear, is that ultimately, what makes us, we are beautiful in God's sight, first and foremost, not by what we do, but by his word on us. His word declares us beautiful in his sight. That word implanted in us then manifests itself. It grows in us and bears fruit. And guess what? Families, the Christian mothers and fathers, raising up their children, going to church, teaching their children in the home, singing hymns, praying, reading the scriptures together. You're doing the most beautiful thing you can for them right there. So even if you don't get all the math in and all the science and all the reading and all that sort of stuff, you are giving them the beautiful thing, the truly beautiful thing, and that's the Word of God, which will bear fruit in their lives. And then finally, I said at the conference that the true beauty, if we want to find beauty in this world, that yes, we can talk about external beauty. We can look at the trees. We can look at the flowers. We can even talk about beautiful people. There are those categories. All right, there is objective beauty out there in the world, but only in the divine service is objective beauty wonderfully wedded to God's word, and call it the internal beauty of God's word. And that's precisely what we're doing in the divine service. We are marrying, all the external things. All right, we're using art, we're using sculpture, we're using architecture, we're using banners and music. All right, rhetoric, all of these things. We're using all the best that human beauty can achieve. We're applying that towards what? Towards God serving us in the divine service, and that's what's happening. All right, the picture there is Revelation chapter 21. Right, very at the end of the scriptures. This is what it's all pointing towards. And again, this is what we're doing every Sunday when we come together. Jesus is making us beautiful. He is the bridegroom making his bride beautiful right there. I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. Right? Jesus ultimately is the beautiful and good husband. Why? Because he makes us his bride, beautiful in his sight, by covering our sins, by speaking tenderly to us, comforting us, clothing us in his righteousness. And that beauty that we have been given by God manifests itself in our lives of love and service to the neighbor.
Awesome. Great stuff, Kyle. Thank you very much for taking us through that. I think that'll be very helpful for quite a few people. And I'll just close then with Psalm 84. Psalm 84, verse 1. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts, right? The places where he is become beautiful places, whether that be a building or a gathered group of people or our own hearts. So Thank you very much for all of this, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Paul.